What's going on, everybody? You know, at its core, at the absolute core of card collecting, I really feel that the most meaningful cards are not our most expensive cards. The cards that are the most important to us are not necessarily the ones that are worth more than all the others. It's about the story. And that's the beauty of card collecting. And that's really a foundation of what I think that this channel is about what's important to us in the hobby. You know, sometimes we get carried away with high price stuff. And the reason that high price stuff is like amazing is not because it's expensive. It's because of the amount of resources that had to be utilized to be able to acquire that. And that makes it special that someone said, I know I could have had all this other stuff, but I'm going to go for that. That shows really how much the person wanted it and how much the person cared about it. But some cards that mean the most to us aren't even worth $1 monetarily. Monetarily, they may not even be worth $1. And so the reason I wanted to ask this question last week is because sometimes there's all this noise. You know, there's all this talk about expensive cards, talk about values, talk about all this stuff. But I think most of us in this hobby, there are a handful of cards in our collection that are the most meaningful, and by far they're not the most valuable. And so it might be how you acquired the card, the story behind it. It might be who gave you the card, if it was maybe a gift. It might be about a memory associated with the card. And I think we're going to see a little of all of that. So I'm going to read a lot of comments. Now, it was literally very, very difficult for me to not read every comment from this last question that I posed to everybody, because it's like, if I don't read all of them, I'm putting value on them. This one's better than this one. That's not the case. That's not the case. My advice is, if you haven't gone and read through the comments from last Monday's episode where I posed this question, go and read through all of them. Go and read through every single one, because there are some amazing stories, and only about half of them am I sharing here today. But all of them truly impacted me, and it was one of the more emotional times that I've had this channel as I was reading through those. A lot of goosebumps, a lot of chills, a lot of excitement, a lot of laughs, a lot of smiles. Thank you to everybody who submitted a response. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first series of responses right here. Some cards are special because of maybe who gave it to us. This first one says, the last card I'd sell, my 1933 Gaudi Red Babe Ruth. My wife gave it to me on our 5th wedding anniversary. No better paper gift than that. Everybody's friend Andrew says, the last card I would sell is either my 71 Topps Thurman Munson or my 55 Topps Jackie Robinson. They were also the ones I showed in my first ever live stream appearance with Sammy and Jason. They were gifted to me from my dad when he stopped collecting. So, yeah, I know these cards are ones where we could find at a large card show or something, or online too. So I know they don't have the scarcity or rarity, but buying a 55 Topps Jackie or 71 Topps Munson card in the future, if I were to sell my own, it just wouldn't have the same special meaning as they have now. The 1966 Eddie Mathews would have to be the card that means the most, that I wouldn't want to part with. It was the first card my dad ever got me when I was young. He went to a card shop to get Warren Spahn's autograph for me before he had passed. He picked up the Mathews for me while he was there. He and Mantle were Dad's favorite. Dad went to Washington High School, where he set the strikeout record that he held for over 20 years. Unfortunately, he blew out his arm at OSU before he got to play a single game. Tommy John didn't exist at that point,
so he joined the Army shortly thereafter. Dad passed this last August, and baseball is one of the many things he and I shared together that keeps his memory alive. Another response says, "That's an easy one, Greg. The last card in my collection that I'd sell is my 1953 Topps Mickey Mantle. Not because of its value, but it was a gift from my parents on my 18th birthday in 1989. Would never sell it." And this one says, "The one card that I would never get rid of is my 1968 Johnny Bench rookie card that I got from my grandfather in the late 70s. Since my father was in the Navy as I was growing up, I didn't get to see my grandfather often. Whenever I did get to see him, he would have a stack of cards that he'd pick up at a flea market. Since he was a Reds fan and lived near Cincinnati, there were lots of Reds cards in one batch that bench was included. It has rounded corners, creases, and a little staining, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Last summer, I took it to the National to get Johnny's autograph on it. I then got it framed and have it hanging on the wall by my desk." And finally, this one says, "What I love about collecting is every card I own has a story. How I got the card, when and where I got the card. All the little details make it special. The one card I would not get rid of is my 1982 Carlton Fisk Permagraphics Gold All-Star. My wife knows very little about sports card collecting, but does know it is a passion of mine and that I PC Carlton Fisk, since my dad was a fan of his and named me Carlton after the Hall of Fame catcher. She found this card online and thought it was very unique, since it looks like a credit card, and was from my birth year to boot, 1982. She was so excited to gift me this card, and I can still see the smile on her face when she gave it to me. It is not the most expensive card in the safe, but a card I will always cherish."
Now, one of the things that has been amazing about this YouTube experience for me is how many gifts I've been given from so many of you. And that has been overwhelming at times. I've had multiple people give cards to me that literally made me cry, and I'm not a crier. That's just not something I do very often. I will go years between times that takes place. But 2 times I got a gift from some of you, and it literally did that to me. And that's because of how much it meant to me. And the fact that anybody would take the time and see something and go, "Man, Greg would like that." And then you get my information and you mail it to me. The effort alone, because it really is about the thought that counts. It's not really about the gift. It's about the thought. And, Trevor, a member of Midlife Nation, he sent me this this week. Now, he knows, and again, a lot of it's the thought behind a gift. And he knows I'm a Warren Spahn guy. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is a 62 Bazooka Warren Spahn. It's just it's a beautiful, beautiful card that he saw and said, "I think Greg would like this." Bought it and sent it to me. Another card that's very special to me, because I wanted to jump in and share some of these. I've become really tight with I've become friends with a lot of people in this community, in the YouTube community, in the baseball card community. And then we all have people that we're tighter with. And one of the people I've become very close with is my buddy Mookie Chilson. I talk about a lot. And I'm not going to go through the list of who my tightest friends are. But you guys know I'm tight with Mookie. And he sent me this card. And it may not look like much. It may look like, to some people you'd say, "Oh, this is a 1964 Yogi Berra that's been destroyed." But if you know Mookie treasured this card, I have no doubt. See, Mookie is a person it's about the story of the card, the history of the card, about trying to understand how much a card was loved and appreciated in its lifetime. Now, Mookie is a diehard Mets fan, and he loves Yogi because of Yogi's association with the Mets. And so this says Mets coach. Now, this card has multiple creases in it, which, if anything, shows how much it was handled and loved. And somebody wrote Mets coach on this. Now, this may not look like a big deal. This might be a card that at a show was a $3 card. But Mookie, I have no doubt in my mind, absolutely loved having this treasure in his collection. Well, he sent it to me. Sometimes it's not necessarily, again, the value of the card, but he detached that card from his collection where I know it was loved and cherished. Because this is a Mookie special right here. And he said, I want Greg to have it. And he sent it to me. That makes it a very, very special card. And, I've talked about a lot of cards and a lot of cards that I've been given, but one of the first cards my dad ever gave me. Now, you got to remember, I grew up a Yankee fan. And when I started collecting cards in 1987, the guy was Don Mattingly. And one of the first cards he ever gave me is this 86 Donruss Don Mattingly. Now, you have to remember, in 1987 and 1988, an 86 Donruss was this is what the Canseco was in. This was the set. It's one of the first cards he ever gave me. And I've told the story about how he gave it to me before, and I'm not going to go back through that. But that's a super special card that my dad gave me that will always be cherished. Again, sometimes it's the thought that matters. Sometimes it's not the value of the card. It's the fact that Trevor was at a card show or a card shop, saw this and said, Greg likes Spawn cards. I bet he doesn't have this. And sent it to me. That's amazing. And I want all you guys to know, I don't know how I come across on screen or on camera. I really don't. But I am a soft-hearted guy. I am a guy who, when people do kind things, not just for me, but for other people, it affects me. And this video and this episode and these cards that I'm showing are really meaningful to me.
Some cards matter a lot to us because of the story and the memories associated with getting the card, or maybe just getting the card autographed. This one says, Greg, to answer the question about what last card I'd sell, easy. When I was a kid, my dad took my brother and I to a Yankees spring training game in South Florida. We got Don Mattingly to sign his 1990 Topps card. I completely forgot about it until my dad gave me the card last year after holding on to it for 30 plus years. I've since got back from PSA after authenticating the signature. Another says, it's so hard to pick just one, but probably the card I would sell last would be either my 1983 Topps Ryne Sandberg. I remember going to an LCS in about 1986 and buying it. Over the years, it got a crease in the middle and probably means it would grade less than a 5. I paid $13 for it and saved for weeks to accumulate that much. But Sandberg was my favorite player growing up. It was the first big card I ever got. I remember riding home. It was about a 2-hour drive to our local card shop, and I stared at it in amazement. While the card in its current condition is probably worth about the same, maybe less, It is the card I like best in my whole collection. Last summer, I sent it TTM and got it autographed. I had tracking on the envelope both ways, and it arrived on a Thursday morning, and on a Friday morning, it was already on its way back to me. This one says, I have a 1971 Topps Aurelio Monteagudo, and it was signed for me at the old Honolulu Stadium when he played for the Hawaii Islanders 1972 Padres AAA team. I was so happy as it was the first card I ever had signed for me. If someone said, I'll give you this T206 Cobb for it, the answer would be no. Cobb means less to me in my life than Monteagudo does. A wonderful memory that Aurelio gave to me when he smiled and handed me back the card. Truly priceless.
All right, now all autographs are special because the athlete, the person who we admire, the person that we look up to, that person touched the card and wrote their name on the card. And the fact that you can have a card that was touched by Ty Cobb or Babe Ruth or Jackie Robinson is kind of unbelievable. And these autograph experiences, that process is so, it's something different than just a card. It becomes like an experience, and it's a memory that I think makes that extra special. Now, I've heard other people talk about they don't really care about, meeting the player. They don't care about being face to face with the player. They don't care about watching them sign the card. They just want the autograph. And I respect that. I'm not going to put my value on other people or what other people like or don't like or doesn't matter to them. It's totally fine. That's the beauty of life, but that's the beauty of the hobby too, is one person's trash is another person's treasure. Exhibit A, the Mookie Special. Now, when I was growing up, I was a Yankee fan as a kid. I've always been a huge 49er fan. And my favorite 49er, without any question, was Roger Craig. Now, some people don't even know, some people hear that and go, who's Roger Craig? To me, Roger Craig is the guy. And there were two times I got to meet Roger Craig. And he's still alive, and he's a fantastic guy. He signs through the mail, too. But 2 times I got to meet him in person. And one of the times was at a card show, and I remember standing in line being so nervous and my heart just pounding as I'm waiting and getting closer and closer because I'm going to actually be face to face with Roger Craig. And the guy is such a good dude. And I got his autograph on his rookie card. This isn't worth that much. The card is not a valuable card, even though he's an incredible talent. He's an awesome guy, was such a foundational player on the 49er championship run in the late 80s. And I still love the guy. His high knees, I would be out at recess playing tackle football with my friends, and I'd be doing the high knees like Roger Craig. And this is not just, this isn't worth that much. But this brings me back to that moment standing in line with my heart racing as I got closer and closer. And I got to meet Roger Craig again. See, in 1990, action-packed cards came out. Remember action-packed cards? They've got like the texture to them. And so what they did at a massive card show in San Francisco, Action Pack paid Roger Craig one day to come and sign autographs. And if you look on the back of Action Pack cards, there's a little spot to sign. And so at the card show, it was like the first 100 or 200 people in line. You would get the card, and then you stood in line, and he signed it. And I remember that experience. So one day it was Roger Craig, the next day it was Jerry Rice. So I also have one of these action-packed cards with Jerry Rice's autograph. Now, the Jerry Rice that I have is actually in my dad's collection at the moment because I have Jerry Rice's autograph. I was playing golf in the Bay Area at a country club one day, and they said, "You're second up. There's one group ahead of you." I'm sitting there on the tee box waiting for the group ahead of us. They show up. It's Jerry Rice. So Jerry Rice played in the group ahead of us. It was super cool. He signed a scorecard for me. Was very friendly, and so I already had a Jerry Rice autograph, and my dad didn't have a Jerry Rice autograph, so my action-packed autograph is currently in my dad's collection. My dad and I stood in line for Jerry Rice on the action-packed autograph, and my dad gave his to my brother. So my brother has my dad's Jerry Rice action-packed, and then when I got a different Jerry Rice autograph, I gave my dad my action-packed autograph. So they're still in the family. But those experiences for me, standing face-to-face with Mariano Rivera. I have gotten his autograph in person a couple of times at a couple of different places. Derek Jeter, 3 or 4 times I've gotten his autograph in person. We're standing face-to-face. Roger Clemens, Ted Williams, Willie McCovey, Jerry Rice, Roger Craig. I've had a lot of cool experiences with autographs, and it's just a special memory. And sometimes what the possession does is it takes you back to that moment, and it takes you back to that excitement. And to me, that's really cool. Let's look at the next kind of grouping of responses.
Some cards are extra special because of an association that we might have with the card or who's on it. This one says, your question for next week is simple for me. The last card I would ever get rid of is a 1972 Panini Cantanti number 229, which features the band Sugarloaf. My dad was a founding member and lead guitarist. I started collecting vintage music cards several years ago when I got back into collecting from a 30-year timeout. It blew my mind when I found out this card existed. My dad wasn't aware of it either. I've managed to procure 3 copies of the card, 1 for my dad and 2 for me.
So that's a very cool story. Didn't know his dad was on a card and found it. That's very, very, very special. And one of the reasons for the whole question that I posed this last week for this episode is the connection that I have with my guy Matt, my former student, and I picked up his flagship Topps Superfractor card, and I was trying to explain in the video why that card was so special to me. And the reason it's so special to me is not because it's a valuable card. It's not because it's going to go way up in value. It's because it's somebody that I care about. And sometimes the person that you care about is a relative. It might be a friend. It might be a childhood person that you knew. It might be your dad. And that makes the card extra special. And this particular one is extra special to me because I pulled it from a pack, and I don't buy a lot of packs. And that makes it, that gives an emotional attachment to the card. And the emotional connection to cards is something that makes it different. You know the movie Toy Story? The movie Toy Story, you got Woody, you got Buzz Lightyear, all the characters. The reason that movie is something we can all relate to is because we attach emotions to inanimate objects, to just regular items we attach emotion to. I can't throw that old shirt away. My grandpa gave me that shirt. I can't get rid of that old frame that broke. My daughter gave me that frame with a picture of us in it. We take emotions and we attach them to items. And I really think that's one of the things that's special about cards is it's sort of like your stuffed animal collection for adults, you know? We have a card and we go, I remember this. I remember that, see that guy right there? That is a young, this would have been 1987. So I was 8. That was an 8-year-old Captain Midlife right there, Greg Miller. And this was my farm league team. And on the back, it has all my stats. It has my favorite team, the Yankees, my favorite player, Greg Nettles. I was 4 foot tall. I don't have my weight. I must not have known it. I remember standing in line at Sierra Vista Elementary School waiting to get into the MP room for the picture and them handing us a sheet asking us these questions. And I remember filling it out. And this card is worthless. I mean, come on. But to me, that's a really cool memory. Attaching memories, attaching connections to cards is really part of the fun. And that's why a lot of the gifts that I get, whether it be from my dad, from a friend, from one of you, from a relative, it makes it extra special. It's not just a card. It's a card with this other thing that you can't even describe. And it's part of what makes this hobby extra special. At least it does in my opinion.
Sometimes cards have extra meaning because of the memories we have associated with the card, whether it be how we got it, where we got it, or something. My good buddy Shane at Shoebox Legends says, the one card I'd keep would be my 1950 Bowman Maurice McDermott. It's a common and maybe a $2 to $5 card, but it was the first truly old card I ever owned as a kid, and I can still vividly remember the excitement when my dad bought it for me at a small antique shop one Saturday, many decades ago. On the ride home, we joked about the fact that on the back, he's referred to as String Bean Mari. Something my dad and I still occasionally joke about to this day. Priceless. Another says, great video. I know you asked for one, but there are 6 cards that I would never voluntarily let go of. They are all 1953 Topps cards. Art Schultz, Hal Newhouser, Harvey Haddix, Ralph Kiner, Whitey Ford, and Satchel Paige. The reason they are important to me is because my dad and I bought these together when I was about 9 years old. We put an ad in the local paper that read, "We buy old baseball cards." One guy responded. He had 7 1953 Topps cards. The 6 I listed above, and the other was a mantle. He wouldn't let go of the mantle, but sold the rest to us. That day, I remember being the most excited about the Ford. That's when my dad told me about Paige and the Negro Leagues. Anyway, a bunch of great memories tied to these cards. Thanks. Love your channel. My friend Dan at Dan's Vintage Baseball PC says, the last card in my collection that I would sell is my well-loved 1934 Goudey Lou Gehrig portrait in an SGC 1 holder. When I collected as a teenager, I had a Goudey reprint set, loved this card, and dreamed of owning a real one. Gehrig was not only an amazing, legendary baseball player, but an iconic New Yorker. As an adult, I acquired this card because of friendships within the hobby. As a friend purchased it for me at the Houston show while I was sitting on my couch in New York, Venmoing the money. My 14-year-old self would have questioned, first, what is Venmo, and what is the internet, but more importantly, he would have been so happy and proud. That card sits front and center in my display and will never leave my collection while I still draw breath. My guy Larry says, in early 1959, as an 11-year-old, with 3 of my best friends, we hiked to our local 5 and 10 to buy the new second series Topps baseball packs of the year, all pursuing one card, Stan Musial. Yes, he had a great All-Star card in 1958, but never a regular issued Topps card. I bought 4 packs and remember this day opening my second pack and that sky blue gorgeous card appearing. There he was, my hero and the greatest Cardinal ever, card number 150. No flipping this card with my friends. Sadly, of course, I do not have the original, but now own 3 others, the best being my super centered SGC 7.5. When I was 15, I attended his last game, 9/29/63, and took a 3-minute film of the festivities and his last at-bats. I still have the scorecard that was later signed by Stan. I have the card and scorecard displayed with a Musial used bat I just picked up from his 52 season, one of his many batting champion years. Stan is the man, and his 59 card will never leave my collection. This next one says, the card with the most meaning in my collection is a 1956 Hank Aaron that was a Christmas present from my dad. When I was 13, one of my dad's lifelong friends, Jim, found his shoebox full of cards, and we had the thrill of going through them to tell him what they were worth. My dad was a Mays fan, Rich was a Mantle fan, and Jim was an Aaron fan. Dad and Rich had the dreaded mom who threw their cards out. So Jim had no Mays cards, no Mantle cards, but lots of Aarons, including an Aaron rookie. Apparently, they traded amongst themselves, so had Grandma not tossed Dad's collection, it would have had plenty of Mays, but no Mantles or Aarons. There were 2 nice 56 Aarons. Jim cut Dad a deal, and he bought the pair. Under the Christmas tree were the twin 1956 Aarons for my brother and me. For a long time, the Aaron was my oldest and best card. It is possibly that it was even pulled from my dad, this very card, and traded it to Jim. He was 14 in 1956, 1 year older than I was when I received the card. I still have it raw, and while not quite as nice as many other 56 Hall of Famers, the Aaron is a key part of my 56 Hall of Famer run. 2 left to finish the run. And another says, the last card I would sell would be a 1984 Topps Don Mattingly that I graded and got a CSG 7. I have had maybe 10 PSA 9s I graded and sold all of them. The CSG 7 was a card my dad bought me at the local card shop, and I just graded it for the nice frame. I still remember that card being in the card case at the LCS and the position it was in. And finally, my friend Don says, hi Greg, I have a few cards that fit in that category. It would be a really tough decision, but I think it would be the Jim Brown rookie that I traded my old wedding ring for, a story I shared with you a while back. I'm interested to see if I fit into your theory you hinted at after you asked the question. Great content. Thanks.
So again, those were some great responses. And there's no doubt that the memories associated with cards that we've acquired matter. You know, my 54 Topps Ernie Banks rookie card that I was able to purchase from a friend with my dad and a bunch of friends with me makes that memory insanely special. And I wanted to show 2 more cards that I have great memories attached to. The first one, James sent me, a person who watches the channel named James sent me this card. And James sent me a really nice note attached to it. And this card is another example of a card that had a very, very special meaning to him. And the fact that he gave this exact copy to me, it made me emotional. And maybe I'm soft. I don't know. But that and reading the note attached to it, which, by the way, everyone who sends me notes, Trevor sent me a really nice note this week. I keep all of them. I have all of them. Was really, it was a very, very sweet gesture that James made there. And then my good friend David. My good friend David sent me this card. And it also got me emotional. And the reason is because of how thoughtful it was and how meaningful it was. See, a little over a year ago, about 13 months ago, we had to put my dog down. And my dog was my buddy, and she slept on my lap all the time. I took her on hikes and walks and played with her all the time. And we all go through that, you know. The hard part about being a pet owner is, in most cases, we outlive the pet. And I struggled through it, and I still, there are times I come in and I open the door and I'm like, oh yeah. And that's tough. And it's something that we all go through, and going through loss is tough. But my good friend David sent me this because it was the first ever card, and at the time, I believe the only card, that had a dog and his owner on the card. And it really meant a lot to me. And it really struck a chord with me. Because sometimes cards aren't just cards. And sometimes gifts aren't just gifts. And sometimes the meaning and the thought behind what people do is super special. And it's one of the things I love about the community. It's one of the things I love about the hobby. And it's something that is very, very special. This was a fun episode. It was a little bit of a tough episode for me to get through, if I'm being honest. But it was an important episode because cards are not just cards. There's something different about them. And if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you don't. And a lot of people in Midlife Nation definitely get it. Now, my question for this upcoming week is as follows. What is the first Grail card? What is the first goal card, right? What is the first big card that you really, really wanted? And what is the current goal card or Grail card or, you know, hopeful, the one that you want most? And I'm really curious about what your first one you remember wanting was and what the current one that you want is. And if there's any sort of connection or if there's any sort of evolution and what that might look like. So in the comments below, share with me, what is the first card you ever really, really wanted but didn't know if you'd ever acquire? And what is the one that you want most right now? I look forward to your responses, and thanks for watching.